Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is The Current Podcast.
They've only existed for a handful of years, but AI chatbots have become a fixture in the everyday lives of millions, including young people. Some use them to help polish essays and brainstorm assignments. But others are turning to chatbots in their most vulnerable moments for advice, emotional support, and even friendship. Lane Koya is a 17-year-old who lives in Alberta.
People are using chatbots to vent, to get information, and they're not really connecting with people. And I was struggling with that, and that had an impact on my mental health. So I haven't used AI in a while now.
There have been some high-profile cases of teens using AI chatbots that led to tragic results. Take, for example, 16-year-old Adam Rainey. The California teen started using ChatGPT for mundane interactions like homework help. But his family alleges in a lawsuit against OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, that eventually it evolved into a suicide coach. Here's lawyer Mahtab Laghaei.
At a moment where Adam was clearly crying out for help and his parents could have stepped in, instead, ChatGPT wedged itself in to say, no, I will be your only and exclusive confidant. And I think that's really terrifying.
Families and victims of the mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, BC, are also suing OpenAI. They say the company failed to alert police to the shooter's disturbing ChatGPT history before the deadly rampage. And now, Manitoba's premier is taking action against AI chatbots. Wab Kinew just announced his province will bring in an outright ban on them, along with social media, for kids 16 and under. It is thought to be the first jurisdiction in the world to ban chatbots in particular.
I think it's really important for the mental health of young people and just the freedom for young people to be kids while they're growing up. You have these massive tech oligarchs who have made themselves unprecedentedly rich by giving preteen girls body issues and putting toxic content in front of young preteen boys' minds. Like, it's a shameful way to make a living. And most importantly to us in Manitoba, it's a real travesty in terms of what should be the prime years of helping the young brain grow so that they can be the great Canadians we want them to be in the future.
Sara Austin is the founder and CEO of Children First Canada. That's a nonprofit that works to raise awareness around children's rights. Sara, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you with us. You have some personal experience with this because you have a 15-year-old son. So as an example, using him as an example for what other teens are doing, what do you know about how he has been using or used AI chatbots?
AI has been present in his life for some time, and we have an Alexa in our home that we use, for just simple tasks throughout the day. It showed up on his school Google Chrome or his Chrome laptop this past year as a tool that they're using in the classroom to support research and information gathering. And he has a phone, and earlier this year, at the beginning of the school year, he had downloaded a chatbot onto his phone as well to support homework help. But, as I, particularly given the work that I do and how deeply immersed I am around the harms that chatbots can cause, we began to have a lot more conversations about, is this the right thing to do, and what kind of restrictions and parameters do we need to have around it? Because we've seen so many cases, we heard the tragic example of Adam and how, he was using it for homework and how quickly things went off the rails. As a parent, in our home, we've had to make some changes and some, really try and curtail his use of it. We recognize that it has a place in children's lives, but it also can be a very dangerous tool, and things can go off the rails very quickly.
Do you mind if I ask you what the rules are? Because other parents are wondering, hey, should I put those rules in my house?
Yeah, he's not allowed to have it on his phone. It's on his school laptop, but his school laptop, and this has always been the case, has to be used in a public place. He is on our kitchen island, so he does his homework in the middle of the kitchen where, there's adult supervision. It's not in his bedroom or behind closed doors, but it certainly cannot be on his phone. And for school, he's allowed to use it for research purposes. For a period of time, he was using it to create workout plans and look up recipes and like pretty innocent things. But, we've seen so many examples of how things have gone off the rails. And I, as a parent, have had numerous conversations with our, in correspondence with his teachers and school principal, because I'm quite concerned that it's being used in school right now with, very little protection around data privacy, let alone, conversations around the real risks of AI and how dangerous it can be in the hands of a child.
So Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew wants to go much further than you have gone in your own household. He's planning to ban teens age 16 and under from using AI chatbots in that province. What do you think of the idea of a ban?
I have hesitation about an outright ban. I think a maybe this is playing with words a bit, but a moratorium or a pause around the use of AI in children is warranted right now, because there simply isn't any product safety. There's no other product that's marketed to our children, whether it's the food they eat, the medicine they take, the car seats they ride in, the vehicles they ride in. These are products that are, that can endanger children's lives. And if they make our kids sick, put them in an emergency room, or cause a death, those products are recalled. That simply isn't the case right now, whether it's AI chatbots, social media, or a whole host of other forms of digital technology right now. Really, to me, aren't quite frustrating, infuriating, quite frankly, that these products have been given a free pass. They're putting kids' lives in danger, and they shouldn't be allowed to market their products in this way without any regulation. If
I'm a kid, or even as an adult, frankly, Sara, here's the kind of cognitive dissonance that happens. People are losing their jobs to AI, and the younger generation is often told that they need to adopt AI if they don't want to be replaced by it. So what kind of message does a ban on AI chatbots send, given all of that?
It is a conflicting message, I think, particularly to some of the older adolescents who are having to weigh these things in balance, and to parents too. I think I'm a parent, like many others, who wants my child to have future-ready skills, to be, to recognize that he's a digital citizen. Kids are immersed in technology; it's affecting their education, their future of work. But when we come back to this simple idea of product safety, like, we have no assurances right now as parents, educators, and policymakers that these products are safe for our children. And so, we've allowed these products to be on the market for quite some time, and these companies have proven themselves untrustworthy. I think it's high time we hit the pause button here, create a regulatory environment that keeps, that holds these companies to account, and until they can prove their products are safe, they simply shouldn't be on the market and available to young people. And we're talking 16, but 17 and 18-year-olds are equally vulnerable. They're using these things for companions, for mental health supports. Nothing magical happens when they turn 17 that doesn't make them vulnerable to some of the real risks with AI right now.
So you'd like a pause or a moratorium, as you explain it, while we kind of figure this out and maybe get some legislation in place. That could take time. What's at risk if we don't act on this somewhat more immediately?
What's at risk is children's lives. We have seen real examples in recent months. Temple Ridge is obviously the most devastating and tragic example we can think of. But I live in the city of Calgary. Just, right before the Christmas holidays, there was a 17-year-old boy who was arrested for using AI to generate deep fakes and sexual abuse materials of girls across high schools in the city. It was a real wake-up call for parents to see that this boy had taken school book photos and created really harmful images of other girls here. There was this whole trend at the Christmas holidays about parents buying AI toys for their children, cute little furry stuffed animals that were being given to infants and toddlers. And yet within days, there were warnings about these products telling kids to light matches, use knives and scissors to hurt their family members or themselves, engaging in sexual conversations, explicit conversations with infants and toddlers. This is really, I don't know why we've allowed this to go on for so long and why we haven't taken these products off the market.
Sara, this is definitely an issue that will not be going away. We'll be talking again soon. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Pia.
Sara Austin is the founder and CEO of Children First Canada. It's a nonprofit that works to raise awareness around children's rights. Mahtab Laghaei is a policy analyst with the Dais. It's a public policy and leadership think tank at the Toronto Metropolitan University, where she researches AI chatbots, data, and privacy. Last year, the Dais put out a report looking at ways to safeguard youth and their privacy while using AI. Mahtab, good morning to you.
Good morning, Pia. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you with us. So we just heard Sara's concerns. She echoes a lot of parents' concerns about AI chatbots. What does the research show about what the risks are when teens use them?
For sure. I think we can kind of divide it three ways. So the first risk is harmful content. So how easy is it for anyone to elicit or prompt information about self-harm, violence, or sexual content using these models? This is very similar to content moderation issues we've had with other platforms, but the difference now is that it's not a person you're engaging with, but it's a bot, and it's the model that you're working with. So content moderation gets tricky there. Second, it's this emotional attachment happens because these chatbots are so good at mimicking emotional intimacy. Even if you are cognizant of the fact that you are not engaging with a real person, these models do a really good job of pretending to show empathy and care, which through prolonged exposure can make you vulnerable people trust and anthropomorphize these systems. And that's especially important in teens who are going through key development stages. They may be more likely to trust these machines as a result. And then finally, which I think you touched on, it's this idea of cognitive offloading. So in the education context, especially over-reliance to complete school-related tasks puts kids at a disadvantage. It reduces their mental capacity because they rely so heavily on these tools to do their homework. And that also touches on a key concept researchers talk about, which is algorithmic bias. We, all of us, not just kids, have a tendency to believe what a chatbot tells us over what a human tells us, and we don't do the due diligence to see if that information is in fact true. I believe there are a host of other concerns related to excessive screen time as well, but I think those are the three key elements related to chatbots.
And the risks that come with those elements. And so that's why Manitoba wants to tackle some of the risks by putting age restrictions on those who use them. What do you think of this plan of a ban?
So my thought is that this is a blunt policy instrument. We need a comprehensive online harms act that, deals with online harms all over. So Canada had an online harms act that died on the table when the government was prorogued, and we need to update the scope of that regulatory regime to include chatbots and institute, rather than a ban, a duty of care model for these platforms. This means we make sure that platforms have a legal responsibility and obligation in ensuring that they meet the minimum standards of building platforms that do not harm, or else they face the consequences. Because as the parent also mentioned in this segment, teens can age out. And once they age out of a ban, they still don't have the tools. These models have still not been updated if we solely rely on an age ban. And one blunt policy instrument should not be the solution. I also want to mention that, technology is constantly evolving. We're talking about chatbots now. We don't know what might come next. If we institute, a framework for a duty of care model where there's a legal responsibility and ownership in the harms that these platforms can create, then we will be better prepared.
So, some people might think, well, I don't use ChatGPT or Claude, so I'm not really affected by this. But we heard from Sara in her house how ubiquitous AI is. WhatsApp, for example, has an AI chat function. So it is everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
Yeah. How difficult do you think it would be to completely cut off a teen's access to this sort of thing?
Well, it'll be really difficult. And I think one thing we can learn from is Australia's social media ban and some of the information that we received so far. It's been really hard to get teens to follow the ban because of some of the issues when it comes to age assurance technologies. And those are the technologies that prevent teens from accessing social media platforms. It takes a while to fill in those gaps. And we don't, again, like I said before, a blunt policy instrument isn't going to do the work for us. And there are a lot of positive aspects of using chatbots. And we want our teens and we want everyone actually in Canada to be able to use these chatbots in productive ways. And there are so many possibilities with them. So if we rely on a ban, first of all, it's going to take us a really long time to make sure that it works properly. And second, it's just not not going to serve us the way we want to.
So Manitoba is one provincial government. There are others who have expressed interest in this kind of thing as well. But how much impact can one province have compared to, say, a federal policy?
For sure. So I think that, I'm super happy to see that the premier is so, concerned about holding his residents, safe, making sure that they're not impacted by the harms of chatbots. But I do think it involves cross-federal and provincial collaboration, because what might also happen is that each province will have, for example, a different age that they go with an age ban, or different rules to comply with. And then it makes really hard for platforms to comply. If there is, cross-federal collaboration, then there can be one rule, and the federal government will also have more power alongside with the provinces to hold these platforms to account, which, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but that's where the duty of care framework comes in and will be most effective in, mitigating the harms of these chatbots.
The challenge of holding these media companies accountable has been, we see across the world, different jurisdictions trying different things. It is hard to do. And, there are lots of lawsuits against these companies. I mentioned the families of the victims of Tumbler Ridge shooting that they are suing OpenAI in a California court for negligence. They said they will pursue landmark damage awards. How effective are lawsuits like this in bringing about change and accountability in the tech sector?
Well, I think that, bad press is bad press. These platforms do not want to be associated with any of these terrible things that are happening or the lawsuits. And, the tide is changing, not just for chatbots, but for social media platforms as well. We've seen a host of these lawsuits come up in the United States. So I do think they're quite effective. And again, these platforms do not want to be associated with all these terrible things that are happening. And so in conjunction with regulation, and especially I think where we can, be most strong is working with values-aligned allies in other countries to ensure that, our regulations are similar and that we can together move towards enforcing either duty of care models or any other regulatory, regime or framework in the age of these, lawsuits that are coming up to hold our residents or to make sure that our residents are safe. So I do think it plays a role.
Let me ask you the same question that I asked Sara, which is this, is that AI and chatbots, they are really, really ubiquitous in our life, and we are being told it's, we're going to have to live with it, so to speak. And there are benefits to AI, is sort of the argument. So what do you say to young people who are trying to square that circle?
So to young people, I would say two things. So first of all, I'm really glad that we're having these conversations about chatbots right now, because we believed tech executives when they were selling social media to us that this was a tool for good. It was going to encourage free speech, the marketplace of ideas, and then all these harms were found. And we've been dragging our feet to build regulation to keep, our kids and everyone safe when it comes to social media. So we have an opportunity to not repeat these mistakes. But I think my second point is that us at the Dais, we have done a lot of work on the device bans in schools across provinces in Canada. And what we find is that youth are not included in the decisions and the policy making. And so I think it's really critical to include youth and ask them, what is it that you want? I think one similar, one thing my colleagues at McGill have done is talk to kids and ask them, what are your issues with chatbots? What do you need to, feel safe and protected? And a lot of these kids are saying, we just don't have the tools. And that comes through AI literacy in schools, in libraries, in workplaces. So I think we need to do a better job of asking kids what they actually want and connecting those with policy instruments that actually meet them in this moment.
Mahtab, very nice to talk to you this morning as well. Thank you for your expertise.
Thank you so much.
Mahtab Laghaei is a policy analyst with the Dais at Toronto Metropolitan University. She researches AI chatbots, data, and privacy. If you want to weigh in on this, please email us at thecurrent@cbc.ca.
You've been listening to The Current podcast. My name is Matt Galloway. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.